All right. So, welcome everyone to our first ever virtual author talk. I'm so excited tonight to have Liv Constantine with us. That's the pen name for international best-selling authors and sisters, Lynn and Valerie Constantine. Their debut thriller, The Last Mrs. Parrish, was a Reese Witherspoon book club selection. Reese described it as a book filled with envy, deception, and power, a great reading escape. And USA Today praised the books as enormous and satisfying twist. The Last Mrs. Parrish is now in development for television, and their second book, The Last Time I Saw You, has been optioned for film. Their latest thriller, The White Stalker, was a Library Reads pick for May. It's an engrossing and twisty read, and I'm so excited to host them here tonight for our first author talk of the summer. And I'm going to turn it over to Lynn and Valerie.
Hi, thank you so much for having us. I'm Lynn.
I'm Valerie.
That's Valerie. And we're excited to be here. So we thought we would tell you a little bit about the book. So The White Stalker is the third book under the Liv Constantine co-writing team. And it is set in Westport, Connecticut, which is a beautiful coastal town in Connecticut that I actually lived in for about 10 years. And it centers around two very different women, Joanna and Piper. And on the surface, it looks as though the story is a straightforward story of a new woman coming to town, Piper, from California. She's very beautiful, sort of perfect looking, and turns the head of Leo, who is Joanna's love and who she's devoted her to, along with Stelly and Evie, the two young children. And he quickly sort of leaves Joanna for Piper. And so as the story alternates between the two women's perspective, Joanna is desperately trying to get her family back, and she's looking into Piper's past and finding some very disturbing things that lead her to believe that her family's lives could be in jeopardy. So that's where the story takes off. And of course, there are lots of twists and turns, and hopefully no one really sees what's coming until the end. And I think Valerie was going to read a little a little excerpt from it, right?
Yes, I'm going to read from chapter 1. The chapters go back and forth between the two women, Piper and Joanna. So chapter 1 is Piper, and I just want to say that I have my dollar store reading glasses on with the little fake rhinestones because they're the ones that have the least reflection, I think, and I can't read without them. So, anyway, so this is a part of chapter 1. Piper Renard pulled into the parking lot of the Phoenix Recovery Center and parked in her reserved spot. When she'd been forced to leave San Diego 10 months ago, she wasn't sure where to go, only that she wanted to be as far away from the West Coast as possible. It had to be somewhere near the water, though, so that she could still sail on the weekends. And it needed to be a place where she could start over without standing out. After extensive research, she'd settled on Westport, Connecticut, a jewel of a town on the coast of Long Island Sound. The former home of Paul Newman and other celebrities, it had a sophisticated vibe and was just over an hour away from New York by train. But best of all, it was the kind of place that attracted people from all over, rather than the kind of small town where everyone's family had lived for generations, making them nosy about newcomers. She'd found the perfect house, a sprawling white clapboard on the water, and joined a yacht club where she kept the sailboat she'd bought as soon as she came east. The one problem she had to overcome was how to reinvent herself. She couldn't continue with her counseling practice, as her license was in her real name, so the next best thing was a business in a similar field. She'd been incredibly lucky to find an existing one for sale and bought the Phoenix Recovery Center a few weeks after moving to Westport. All she'd had to do was have a lawyer set up an LLC for her under the name Harmony Healing Arts. It had already been a thriving business, offering meditation retreats, mindfulness, recovery programs, and nutrition and yoga classes. She grabbed her briefcase from the passenger's seat, slid out of her Alfa Romeo Spider, and walked toward the entrance of the building, feeling a sense of pride as she looked up at the sleek, two-story structure of glass and cedar. She unlocked the front door and went directly to her office. It was still early, 6:30 a.m. Piper liked to be there well before the center opened at 8. It gave her time to get centered before she thrust herself into her busy day. She opened her laptop to check the social media accounts for Phoenix Recovery Center. Instagram first. Another 300 followers. Excellent. It must have been the podcast episode she'd uploaded yesterday on filling your well before trying to fill someone else's. Twitter next. 35 retweets of her blog post on selfishness being the new selflessness. And on Facebook, the center had hit 10,000 likes. Very good morning indeed. She dimmed her office lights and pressed play on her iPad. As the soothing sounds of Debussy filled the room, she closed her eyes and leaned back in the chair. Maybe things were really going to be different here. They had to be. She couldn't keep starting over and finding new places to hide.
So Valerie and I thought we would talk a little bit about how we work together. That seems to be one of the first questions and the most frequent question that we get as to co-authors and sisters. People often say, I don't know how you write with your sister. I love my sister, but I would kill her. Fortunately, that isn't an issue. We get along very well. So we really began, I think our love of writing began with our love of reading and our love of libraries. And back to our earliest childhood memories, we would go on a weekly basis with our mom and our aunt to the public library, and we would check a book out. Oftentimes, all of us would pick the same book, read it, and have our own sort of family book club. And at the time, this was over 20 years ago, Val and I were talking about what we liked to read then, which was a lot of family sagas were in vogue, and we were reading Susan Howich and others similar to her. And we talked about how, and a lot of them were ethnic stories as well, Italian families, Irish families, and there really weren't any about Greek families. And Valerie and I are both Greek. So I said, there really aren't any books about Greek families. Maybe we ought to write one. And so we did. We wrote a book together called Circle Dance, again, over 20 years ago. And not knowing anything about it, we bought a book called How to Write and Sell Your First Novel. We used to get together once a week. This was before internet and email. So we would separately write and then physically get together. We lived in the same state at that time. And we would go over each other's work. And we had a quota of 3 pages a day during the week. So 15 pages a week. And when we kind of methodically went along and finished the book, really naively thinking it was going to immediately get picked up by an agent and get published. And we persevered, and we ultimately did get a small publisher on our own. We didn't get an agent at the time. And the book was published, and, it did okay, but nothing spectacular because, as I said, it was a small publisher. And then I moved away to Connecticut. I had twins who were 4. I got very active with them in homeschooling, and Val was active in her career. And so we didn't come back together until, I guess, about 6-7 years ago when we began collaborating again. And that's when we started writing together as Liv. And then I'll turn it over to Valerie about how that started and how that goes.
Thank you, Lynn. But the way it began, it actually began with Lynn, who went to a Thriller Fest conference by herself and in New York. And she had been working on another novel, a conspiracy thriller, for a few years, several years actually, and was not quite finished it. And so she went to this conference feeling like, well, this would be a great way to take some classes and just get fired up again. And so she went to this conference, and that's exactly what it did. It really fired her up, and she got to work on her book, and she finished it. And then she said to me the following year, this is a great conference, and does, it will really be terrific for you if you're thinking about writing again. Why don't you come with me? And I said to her, because I don't write thrillers. And she said, it doesn't matter. They are craft classes, and they are about writing. It doesn't matter what kind of writing you're doing. These classes will help you. So I decided to go. I went. The same thing happened to me. It's an amazing conference every July. Unfortunately, this year it's been canceled. They're doing it virtually. But anyway, I went, and so we decided at that point that we would collaborate once again. We began a book about two women, a friendship, finished that book and submitted it, and kept getting rejections. They were always kind rejections, well, it's really not what we're looking for right now, or, well, I like it, but I'm not super excited about it. And none of them were mean. I don't think they send mean rejection letters out any longer. That's to protect themselves in case somebody has a big hit and you rejected it, right? So we put that book away, and I think that is something that a lot of authors will tell you, that they have at least one book in a drawer someplace, maybe two or three, that just never got published and probably shouldn't have been published. So we put it away and we started on another book. The way we begin is that we take an idea or situation that seems like an everyday kind of experience that most people have had, or at least they've seen or heard about, that's a common occurrence, and talk about how we can turn that on its head and just make it turn upside down. So that goes on probably for a month to 2 months, where we talk about what if, well, what if this, well, how about that? And then what if this? And it just begins to snowball until we get the sort of bones of the story. And then we begin to develop our characters around the story and the twist. And again, that takes some time. The characters feel like they're really developed when we first begin, but of course, as the writing starts a few months later, the characters really come into their own and become much more layered as we get to know them better, and they start acting out in the story, and the story changes as well. So I will maybe turn it back to you, and you can talk a little bit about our day-to-day nuts and bolts of how we actually get the writing done.
Sure. So as Valerie said, we do a lot of prep work again, and that character development continues throughout the story. So we don't want to get so overburdened by detail that we can't begin the writing, because we don't have all the time in the world, obviously, to do it. So oftentimes backstory will change. We may think that a character has had a certain incident in the past, and then all of a sudden a trauma may occur, or things will change a little bit. And we're both very open to allowing that to happen. So even though we're writing independently on a daily basis, what we do is we speak in the morning and we talk about, okay, when we're starting, we know the first few chapters, but we don't outline at all. We're very much what we call plantsers. So we plot a little bit and we write by the seat of our pants, but we're a hybrid of all of that. So we know the first few chapters and we decide who's going to write which scene. And we write during the day, and then we email those chapters when we're finished to each other. And then we FaceTime usually later in the afternoon, and we discuss what we've both written. And oftentimes as well, I may write something and send it to Valerie and ask her to finish it, or ask her to fill in parts, and vice versa. And so this goes on for the whole first draft, which can take 6 weeks to 12 weeks, depending on how much under the gun we are, and if we're going to sit down. Sometimes we try to write 2,000 words a day. Sometimes it could be 3,000, and then if we're lucky, sometimes it can be 1,500. But it's probably around the 2,000 to 2,500 range, which is significant. So what we also allow is, if all of a sudden I've told Valerie I'm going in one direction, but as I'm writing, if I'm inspired to do something, I feel complete freedom to do that, because I know that we're going to be revising this manuscript 2, 3, 4 times. And so that if there's anything that I do that she doesn't agree with, or that she thinks needs tweaking, it can happen. And the same with her. And in this way, we really feel that we let the story develop a lot more organically and allow the characters to come through. And so 9 times out of 10, that first chapter because in the beginning, as we write ourselves into the story, that first chapter will be rewritten by the end of the book, because by then we sow the characters in a much deeper way than we did in the beginning. And so this continues, as I said, for the whole first draft. And then we put it down, take a little bit of a breather for a week or two, pick it back up again. We each read the book through, make notes, talk about areas that we think need to be, either cut. And then we go through again and give assignments for round 2. Okay, who's gonna work on this? Who's gonna work on that? And we go through another whole session of that. And then I'll turn it back to you again for the next part now.
I think I saw a question, didn't I? Right?
We'll
You
finish
had a question pop up.
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
I can't hear it. I didn't hear that, but I think I saw the beginning of the question, and I know exactly what the ending of it was. What happens when we don't agree?
Right.
Right? Everybody,
Right.
that is a famous question that we get asked all the time. And we've jokingly said to each other that we really should come up with a really great fight that we had at some point, sort of a knockdown drag out. But
Well, you can tell them about your dream. You just tell them about your dream that you had the other night.
I did have a dream the other
We
night.
had a fight, right? We were
directing a movie, and so the main character was going to meet the man that she had her sights on, and Lynn said to me, well, I think she shouldn't meet him. He should walk into the store and they should meet there. And I said, no. They should meet at a party at his house. And we had a big fight about it. But that doesn't happen in real life. And we don't direct it either. So
not anyway.
And it does. I mean, sometimes it's gotten mildly heated, I would say, but not often. We usually we each state our case, and then the one that seems like what the character would most likely do and was true to how they would act and true to the story, the other one will see that, yeah, you're probably right here, or vice versa, whichever one of us is right, which is usually me, of course, but and
Let her think that.
that's right. I have the floor, so I get to say that. So anyway, and then the very occasional times, I think there have been 2, when we just couldn't come to an agreement, we sent both scenarios to our agent without telling her who was who, and said, can you make the call here? So once she made the call for Lynn, and once she made it for me. So we're even now, right? So far.
She's got to keep score. She's got to say this is.
Yeah, I always, yes. And you never
Yes.
did.
But I think, another element of that is working together, just really respecting each other, which we both do. And we don't have a volatile relationship, thankfully, as sisters anyway. I mean, we're really pretty much on the same page with most things. That's not to say that we don't get irritated with each other. If we're doing editing, which is tedious, that can get, where you're both tired and you're just you can get a little snappy, but it's not, a fight or anything like that. But I think also we both really respect the other's intuition about a story, and we both really immerse ourselves in that story world when we're writing it, to the point where both of us will, have dreams about it in the middle of the night. I mean, we're both kind of living that all of the time. So it doesn't ever feel competitive or who's right. I mean, we both really genuinely want what's best for the story. And I think we've also learned to be that way in working with a publishing editor, because you can't hold on to what you think and be stubborn about things. But when everyone on the whole publishing team is doing their best to put the best book out there for everyone, and everybody has level of expertise that may be in one area that we don't have, and even with each other, there are things, strengths and weaknesses that complement each other. So as long as we all have that same goal, which we do, of the best possible book, it makes it a lot easier to listen to each other and to compromise. Or it's not even a compromise, really. It's just to really resolve any sort of difference of opinion, I would say.
Yeah.
Right.
You explained that very well. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think we were talking, I don't know if we want to do more questions, or if you want to hear more about process. We don't want to get into the weeds too much.
Sure. If anyone has questions for Lynn and Valerie, you can enter them in the chat feature. You'll see it along the bottom of your Zoom window.
One of the questions that we get a lot often is, do you get to pick your own title, and do you get to pick the cover design? And so the answer to both of those questions is no. But we do have input. For the first two books, for The Last Mrs. Parrish and The Last Time I Saw You, the titles changed when it got to the publisher. We had a very different title for The Last Mrs. Parrish, but we think, and they did work in conjunction with us. I mean, we all kind of collaborated and went through a lot of different titles and eventually all agreed on one. For The White Stalker, that was our working title from the very beginning. And we were thrilled that they kept it because we really liked that. The covers, of course, are done by the art department at HarperCollins. And again, we don't even say, well, we think that maybe this should be on the cover or it should look like this. They just come up with a design. And I think they knock it out of the park every time. And we really, especially love the White Stalker cover. It's just, it's a really nice cover.
It's beautiful. Yeah, and I like too, like I was, so the last, and the other thing that's interesting is they changed often, they're not going to, I don't think with the White Stalker, I think we're going to keep the same for paperback, but like if you look at The Last Time I Saw You, this is the hardback for that. And then the paperback is quite different. But I love the paperback. And I think oftentimes because of the time of year one comes out, you know, a more summery look, like with Mrs. Parrish, which we loved both of those covers. Now, let's see, there we go. So we loved the hardcover for the Last Mrs. Parrish. But then how can you not love the paperback, right? With the big hat and sun. And so, yeah, they really do an amazing job with all of that.
And the other interesting thing with covers and titles is that the covers and sometimes the title changes when books are published in another country.
So oftentimes, yes.
Yeah, completely, definitely a different cover, and often a completely different title, which is interesting. So we're still waiting for the book.
Greek one.
Parrish was published in Greece. That was one of the last countries it was published in, foreign countries, and we're still waiting for our copy because we both want to try to read it in Greek, but we haven't gotten a copy yet. So we'll see. Because of course, I can't read it in any of the other foreign languages. I could read it in Spanish, but I wouldn't know what everything said. So, but the Greek might.
I think you should try to read all. Yeah, it's the Russian or the Czech or it's exciting to see all the different colors.
Chinese. Seeing it in Chinese was fun.
Yeah,
that was interesting.
All right. Well, anyone can enter their questions into the chat. I definitely have one to start off, though. How did you guys come to write under a single pen name?
Go ahead, Lynn. You can do that.
Sure. So we weren't sure how it was going to work when we got our publisher. We had written that other book that we told you, Circle Dance, and we had used both of our names on the cover. So we kind of assumed that we would do that. But when we had lunch with our agent and with our editor, and they both said, you know, it has a tendency to be confusing unless you're really well known to authors. To, you know, sometimes readers are put off by that because they may be concerned. The voice might not sound the same. So then we said, well, what about if we use our initials? And we were going to be LV Constantine. And they said, you know, there's been so much use of initials lately that's kind of not the direction we want to go in either. So Valerie said, well, why don't we just put a vowel in between our names and make it Liv? And everybody looked at each other and said, yes, we love that. So that's how we came up with it. And, you know, I think it was the best way to go as well, because as with now the propensity of using social media and connecting with readers that way. I think it would be really hard, again, under two names and people don't know who they're talking to. So it's just much easier to operate as a single entity, even though we don't hide the fact that there are two of us. And it's, clear on our biography that it's a pen name of both of us. But we're comfortable answering to that as well, as Liv Constantine, if one of us happens to be somewhere representing. So we just will say, well, on behalf of the Liv team, and so we can communicate as that persona.
Excellent. We're getting some questions in the chat. Do either of you write or publish separately?
Yes. So I write under another name, Elsie Shaw. So my husband gets confused as to who I am. And that I write, I think Val mentioned earlier that I was working on that thriller that took me like 20 years to write. So that is The Network, which I have that as well somewhere. Here we go. My book's here. So this I write under Elsie Shaw, and the second book coming out, which I don't have handy, is the Silent Conspiracy, coming out in September. And this is a series with two investigative journalists, a man and a woman, Jack and Taylor Logan. And so it's more of a, it's not a psychological thriller. This is more world stakes, a lot more body count, action thriller, which is the reason I write it not even under Lynn Constantine, because Lynn is so similar to Liv that the concern was people might pick that up thinking it's a Liv book, and readers, you want readers to get the book that they think that they're getting, in the same genre. So even though it's still a thriller, it's definitely more of a subgenre separate from psychological thrillers. And Valerie is working on, and I don't know what name she'll use, but she's working on an independent project as well right now. So.
Excellent. So more to come. Do you always write in the same space, or do you like it quiet, or do you like to write to music?
You want to start, Val?
Sure. I have 3 different places. Actually, I can write anywhere, which I think is a good thing, because circumstances change and you just never know where, you might have to be in the dentist's office waiting or something. And if you have your laptop, you can write. I cannot write in coffee shops because I tend to get too immersed in other people's conversations and start listening. Oh, that is really interesting. So I can't do that. I do have a desk which right now is covered with other papers that I'm working on. So I haven't been working there, but that is normally where I work, and I am alone there. But I also have been known to very often write at the kitchen table or outside on my deck. So I sort of move around. I don't listen to music because when I listen to music, I like to really listen. And so that would be distracting for me.
I thought you were going to say you like to dance. But...
And I do like to dance too. Yes, you're right. And that would be hard.
Right. I also can write anywhere. When I was carting them around when they were younger, I would often write in, waiting, and I would listen to classical music to drown out any conversation around me. But now I have my own office at home, and I do 99% of my writing in my office. And I don't listen to anything unless my husband also works from home. So his office is right outside of mine. So if he's on a conference call, then I will put my earphones in and listen to some classical music, because the talking is distracting for me.
Sure. Let's see. Now, I know that both The Last Mrs. Parrish and Last Time I Saw You are in development for kind of the big and small screen. What has that been like for you guys as the authors? Are you involved? How do you? It must be exciting.
Yeah, it's exciting. We're not very involved. I mean, down the road, we maybe get a little bit more involved, and we talk about the idea of maybe in future books of working on screenplays. So we're not sure at that point. But right now, yeah, while it's still in development, we're just kind of get our updates from our film agent and our literary agent, and that's about it, right?
Yeah, I will say that it takes really long. contracts go back and forth and back and forth, and it feels like you get really excited about that when it first happens, and then you put that little thing away in the closet because it just is somebody said that they move at glacial speed, which is really true. And there's also the fact that something can be optioned and never get made. Just because something is optioned doesn't really guarantee that it's going to be made. So I think it's something that that is in the back of your mind, and you think, wow, it would really be wonderful if it happened. But I don't think either one of us really dwells on that.
Right. A good friend of mine, another author, said that her agent says to her, you can get excited when you're sitting in the movie theater,
Right.
or you're sitting in front of television and you're watching it. That's when you get excited.
Now, right? Right.
Right.
Maybe one day we'll be back in movie theaters. I don't know. Yeah.
Let's see, a couple more questions in the chat. What advice would you give to aspiring writers who dream of writing and publishing books?
Want me to start, or
You can
well,
start.
the biggest, the first thing I would say is that you have to have a lot of perseverance and be prepared for rejection, but try not to let that get you down. And for me, I think I attribute by finally getting published with a couple things. Number one was really working on my craft, seeking out good mentors and good teachers, and really doing workshops and things that helped my writing to get better, and doing a lot of reading, which I like to do anyway, and then also conferences, networking, and getting to know others in the publishing industry. And then again, just that level of perseverance of knowing that no matter what happens, you're not going to give up, because it can be very discouraging. And if you could give up right at the point where maybe if you had waited another week or two, that's when you might be able to get that break, because it is a very competitive business. But if you really want to do it, I think you just have to stick it out. Don't you agree, Valerie?
I do. I agree. And I would, definitely echo honing your craft as much as possible by taking classes. Some people feel like they really, that it really helps them to be in a group that critiques. And I would say, if you decide to do that kind of thing, make sure that you're with people who are really going to be able to give you good advice. I mean, sometimes that can be a disadvantage. So you have to be really careful with critiquing groups. In terms of, yes, lots of reading. And I would say as much as you can, intersperse your reading with the classics, because there's nothing like that for, really helping your writing and the style. And lastly, I would say write the book that you love. Don't look at what trends are, or feel like, oh, these really seem to be popular right now, so maybe I'll write this in this genre. And if it's not something that you love and not the kind of book you love to read, then it probably is not a good fit. So just write what you love to read and what you're really passionate about.
Yes, I agree with that.
Excellent. We had another interesting question. Do you try to keep your books to a certain number of pages?
So
it's so interesting. Yeah, I mean, we do word counts. So I mean, anywhere from 80,000 to 100,000 words typically, which is, I don't know, 3 to 350. But talk to, doing this author talk that I've been doing lately, and I'll talk to some authors who talk about that they plotted everything out and they do the 3-act structure, and they know exactly which chapter their twists and turns. And it's so interesting because we don't do any of that. We really just write the story, and the story is as long as the story needs to be, within reason. I mean, we're not going to write a 500-page book, because that's not what our editor's going to want. And there are definitely our standards, but we don't say, I mean, we estimate, okay, in terms of our scheduling, we say, if we write around 90,000 words and we need to have it delivered, that's how we figure out what our goal is. But the story will dictate whether that's a little bit on the shorter side, which could be like 80,000, or a little bit longer, 100 and some thousand. So we really don't follow any type of formula at all, other than what's going on in the story. Right.
Right. But the books do tend to be somewhere between 300 and maybe 360 pages.
Yeah.
I would say. Right. But, which is about right for the genre. And of course, every genre is different, obviously.
Right.
And if you're a Russian author, then you have to write 1,000 pages. So,
well, right. I mean, you never know. Like you have the goldfinch, right? Which was how many? I mean, there's always the anomaly that, but I would, especially if you're a new writer, I would encourage you to look up whatever genre you're writing, and writers can find what is the typical range of that genre. And you want to aim for that, because it's expensive for publishers. They're not to be able to print a book that is that many pages if it's 200,000, and for readers too, it's daunting to have a book that's like that, unless that's, I guess, Game of Thrones, this sort of thing have that. But for most of them, you want to be in the typical range.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of genre, I know that your second book, The Last Time I Saw You, it has more of a murder mystery feel. Did you find the process a little different for writing that one to the thrillers?
That was very different. And it was more complicated. It was more difficult to write. And we deliberately went in that direction, more of a sort of Hitchcock, Agatha Christie sort of feel, where it still, we felt, had elements of a psychological thriller. But we felt like we couldn't write the same book again. Mrs. Parrish was Mrs. Parrish, and we just went in a little bit of a different direction for that one. I think some readers I think there were some readers who were expecting more of a kind of flashy Mrs. Parrish book again. But the writing was challenging for that one, not only because it was a different sort of format, but also because it was the second book after a very popular book. And so there was pressure to make it better and, or live up to the first book. Would you agree, Lynn?
It's true. I mean, even with the White Stalker, people, we get a lot of comments on Instagram that, well, I loved Parrish and I hope this is as good. And, so fortunately, so far I'm seeing a lot of happy people saying that they're enjoying it as much as Mrs. Parrish. And I think it is more similar. Of course, it's not the same story at all, and it's not as flashy, but it has some of those sort of Parrish vibes, I guess you would say. So, but again, it wasn't that we intentionally did that. I mean, that idea for the story came to us, and we just go with this. We follow the story that we really can get excited about and passionate about, and we hope it's going to resonate with our readers.
Excellent. Oh, we have a question in the Q&A. Where do you find writing classes? Did you two start with writing classes before you?
Well, my college major was English literature, so that was helpful. And then where I am in Annapolis, we have an amazing college here, St. John's College, which has an outreach into the community that's just unbelievable. So they have writing classes that you can take, not for credit, just for people in the community. They have a series of great book conversations that are, that last for the whole year, and they take maybe 12 different books. It's usually a Greek tragedy and something of Shakespeare, and you just sit around and discuss it. Similar to the classes that are there, which are just with a tutor and not a lecture kind of thing. Everyone just sort of talks about the books. So that's been a terrific resource for me. And then, of course, Thriller Fest was also terrific. We go every year, and the craft classes and the lectures there are wonderful. And Lynn, you found a terrific mentor.
I found a local group that was called Write Yourself Free in Westport, Connecticut. Their teacher, Patrick McCord, he's still doing some, I don't know if he's doing any online classes, but that was a small group setting where there were 5 writers and we would get together once a week for 3 hours and you would read a little bit and he would give you, not the critique, the feedback, and the other people wouldn't really criticize, they would just kind of tell you what they heard, and he would go over different elements of story that was helpful. But I think probably in most communities there are local writers groups, and the best thing would be to really ask around and get recommendations from other writers who have done well using certain people, because it's like anything. I mean, the wrong writing advice is worse, I think, than no writing advice, right? And you have to be, as Valerie said, you do have to be careful because it's not all created equal, and you want to be in a situation where you're able to develop your voice and you're getting that support. So I would just say do the research. And another really way to do that is to work with a really good freelance editor. If you've been writing and you need help polishing, and again, you can get recommendations. And ITW, which is International Thriller Writers, their website is a great resource, and there are a lot of people there that writers can get advice from. And they also do an online thriller writing course with I think they have 7 or 8 different instructors. That is a rolling thing. So that's another avenue to look into.
I think in every state that there is a writers association. Like in Maryland, I belong to the Maryland Writers Association, and there are chapters in every county, and then there are speakers and there are workshops and those kinds of things. And I'm sure there have to be those in every state. So that's another great resource.
Sure.
And I wonder if St. John's has online.
What did you say, Erin?
Oh, I said I'll give a quick library plug too. We do have a couple great writing groups. If you go to the Wilmington Library webpage, you can find those as well.
That's great.
And I was going to say, Valerie, but I bet you that just St. John's might, especially in today's environment, maybe they have some online courses that are open.
Yeah, that's very true.
Right.
They probably
Yeah.
do.
So, yeah.
Excellent. One thing I was wondering is this must be quite a different book tour for you two with the pandemic. How has that been different? Is it all bad? Is there some good in that? What would you say?
It's mixed.
Well, I mean, there have been, obviously there are positive aspects to it. I mean, we both really miss meeting with readers in person, with booksellers, with librarians. I mean, there's just nothing that can replace being in the same room and talking to people and connecting. So that's been disappointing, but of course understandable. But the nice part is we're all learning technology a lot more and Zoom, and we're able to connect like we probably wouldn't have met you, because I don't know that we would have come to the library. So this is a great way to reach more readers and talk to more people. And then maybe when we're back in person again, now we've made some of these connections, we could actually meet in person maybe next time. Right?
Yeah, true.
And we don't have to get on an airplane, so that's good, I guess, right?
Yes.
It's always tiring. Yeah.
Yes, we have a comment in the chat that one of our viewers is loving the online chat because it helps them connect when they don't live near a bookstore that has a book signing. So I think we do definitely appreciate it.
We've heard that comment before, oh gosh, authors never come to my town. And so this is a great way to be able to attend one, which is wonderful, because as Lynn said, I think we really are able to reach more people. I just wish we could see them, because there's just something about connecting with readers and having that give and take, and actually hearing somebody ask the question and seeing their face. So I definitely miss that part of it.
I mean, and I think we're probably going to move to a place in the future where it's a combination of both. I think people are realizing that, yeah, people are interested in getting online and seeing this, and that it is an opportunity for people who don't necessarily want to get in the car and go to a bookstore, or can't, or are not near one. So even when hopefully the world goes back to normal, whatever that is, maybe we'll be seeing half a virtual, half a real tour, for artists and authors.
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, we have a viewer from Texas, so it's great. We're
nice, great,
wide-reaching. Let's see. Oh, I was also wondering, I know at our library, the Reese Witherspoon's book club picks are a real literary tastemaker here. What was it like for you guys to hear that you'd been selected for her book club?
It was amazing. It was,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
we were shocked.
mind blowing. Yeah, we had no idea, and we were, beyond, I mean, and still are beyond grateful. It was just such a good experience. You know, first of all, Reese is such an amazing person, and all the things that she does for women and for the community at large is terrific. And it was such an honor for that to be chosen and to be a part of that. And even today, like when the White Stalker came out, they were so gracious to do a shout out about it. And you're considered an alumni once you've been a part of the book club. Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely been a huge highlight of our journey so far with publishing.
So Lynn has a little quick story to tell you about Reese Witherspoon and social media. And was it Instagram?
It was Instagram. So when I had just started learning Instagram, I was kind of a Twitter expert, and it was 2017, right when this happened. So it's been 3 years ago. And I have twins who are now 19. So at the time they were 16. And looking at Instagram, and I saw that Reese herself tagged me in a post with, about the book. It was like she had done a video about why. I'm like, oh my gosh, I called my daughter. I said, look at this. What am I supposed to do? She's like, Mom, like it, put a heart there. You have to like it. And I said, well, should I say something? She's like, yes, right. Write her. So I typed in there, thank you so much. We're just over the moon. And she right away wrote back and said, oh, I didn't even realize there were two of you until last week, with like a laughing emoji. And so I wrote back a laughing. And again, and the whole interaction, everything that would happen, I've got my daughter next to me, making sure that I'm doing the right thing. And it was like so unnerving. I'm expecting to be so taken aback and so starstruck, but I really was. But anyway, she was, super sweet and gracious and wrote me back. So that was my little interaction with Reese on Instagram, which now I understand how to use, fortunately. But.
Oh. Right. Well, any questions can go right in the chat. Oh, do you both use Instagram now?
Lynn is the Instagram, Twitter, social media expert, and I get down on my knees every day and thank God that she does that, because I'm terrible at that. I am on Instagram, personally, but I don't really post that often, and I might check it every 3 days and that kind of thing. So Lynn is the one who sends me reviews and news and all of the. She does it all.
Yeah, I'll see something cute. I'll do a screenshot. I'll text you to her.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn.
Yes, you're welcome.
I know something. Let's see, another question. Oh, one of our viewers said that she thanks you because you commented on one of her reviews and she felt like she was fangirling.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you. Well, I mean, I love seeing, I love getting tagged with pictures and with reviews. And, I don't know if people realize, how much we appreciate when someone has something nice to say, or that someone takes the time to share a review of what they thought about, our work. We read them and we see those. Valerie doesn't, but then she does through me. But most authors do. And and I do try. I'm not always able to get to everything, but I do try to at least, like something. And when I'm able to write something back, then I will.
Do you guys have anything new coming up in the works? Is there anything else we should be looking for?
We do.
Well, yes, we're working on our fourth book right now, which we don't have a title or anything for that, but hopefully will be out next May. This one, it'll be another psychological thriller with a woman main character, and this time we'll have a male point of view, which we haven't yet had in our books. And then, as I said, under Elsie Shaw, the network is out now, and then the Silent Conspiracy will be out in September. So, yeah. But for right now, the White Stalker, and then Last Time I Saw You out in paperback, which is there. Yeah.
Right.
Any other?
You're looking at two different screens, right? It's
I
getting.
am.
I know it's tough to do that. I
I see
know.
myself from all angles.
I know, right? Hmm.
Oh, and I know, at least for myself, one last question I had is, do you guys always, do you know the twists going in, or do you sometimes find some by surprise as you're writing?
Both, both of the above, right? We know the big twist always, the main twist that the book is going to turn on, but as we write, you hit it right on the head. Yes, the other twists happen, and some things that we thought were going to happen don't. So that definitely develops along the way. But we pretty much know the ending when we start. Although we did have one change in one book where the ending changed.
Yeah, I mean, we know the twist ending, but we don't always know what's going to happen to all the characters, because a lot of times we'll say, well, what's going to happen to her, and we're like, I don't know, we'll have to see, and it changes. But right, because they're not all the twist isn't always dependent upon all the characters coming out one way or another. It's just as long as the twist.
In the Last Time I Saw You, the killer changed fairly late
in the second one.
in the writing process.
Yeah. Right.
So that was surprising to us.
Sure. Well, thank you guys so much for answering all the questions. If anyone has any additional questions to add to the chat, I'm also going to paste, we've partnered with Haley Booksellers to have Liv Constantine's books available for sale. So I'm going to paste that in the chat here, and it will also be on our website on the live feed there.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
for inviting us.
for having us.
Great.
It was so nice to meet you. Thanks everybody for watching.
Yes.
Everyone stay well, stay safe.
Stay well, absolutely. Yes, be safe.
Thank you so much for
Bye-bye.
joining our first author talk of the summer and our first ever virtual author talk.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so
Okay.
much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Good night.